This is Powered by Learning, a podcast designed for learning leaders to hear the latest approaches to creating learning experiences that engage learners and achieve improved performance for individuals and organizations.
Powered by Learning is brought to you by DaVinci Interactive. For more than 25 years, DaVinci has provided custom learning solutions to government agencies, corporations, medical education and certification organizations, and educational content providers. We collaborate with our clients to bring order and clarity to content and technology. Learn more at davinci.com.
Hello and welcome to Powered by Learning. I'm your host, Susan Court, and today I'm joined by DaVinci CEO Luke Kempski and our guest, Catherine Mattiske. Referred to as the maestro of changing behavior, Catherine is a globally recognized training expert and the inventor of the acclaimed instructional design process, ID9 Intelligent Design, an innovative research-based system which has dynamically powered results for more than 5 million participants in global brands. She's also the author of the new book, Unlock Inner Genius, Power Your Path to Extraordinary Success. She joins us today from her office in Melbourne, Australia. Welcome, Catherine.
So glad you could join us, Catherine.
Thanks so much for having me.
Catherine, start out by telling us a little bit about you and your career in the L&D industry.
So I grew up in Australia and I'm still in Australia, and yet most of my work is in the US and in Europe. And I started in learning and development completely by accident in the days when computers were coming into the everyday realm of companies. And I became a computer trainer in Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint, even before it was put into Microsoft Office. And even in those early days, I started to notice that some people were really productive and efficient and excited about this new technology, and other people were scared to death. Like they were just absolutely fearful to the core when they came into my classroom to learn whatever it was. And actually, I started to think about, well, why are some people really successful and others just have this block? And I still see that exact paradigm today. And so all those years ago, nearly 30 years ago, it set me on the path to say, what could I do in a learning capacity, in a training capacity, to unlock that productivity in people and to get some of that genius piece that these other people had, and say, how do I bottle that and get that into those fearful people? And that's really been the driver of my entire career.
Oh, great. Thanks for sharing a little more about your background, Catherine. I know with your books and your research, there's so much that we could cover today and that it would all be relevant to our listeners. So I'm hoping to just kind of provide like a high level view of your perspective. And then the learning and development leaders that listen to the podcast can dive in further looking at your books and your research. To start us off, can you talk a little bit about what makes up a successful learning experience from your perspective? And how should that really impact someone responsible for creating one?
I think the first piece around it is there's 3 words that you use: successful, learning, and experience. And when you put those 3 words together, it's a little bit like 1 + 1 + 1 = 4, because you can be successful as a learning and development professional, and you can actually deliver learning, but then to put the experience with it then makes the assumption that something will happen as a result of it. So for me, what I believe is that if something doesn't happen, in other words, if people don't apply their learning, if they don't take action, if the learning transfer doesn't happen, then learning has not taken place. So in effect, if people go to a training course, and it could be a course on compliance or a system or a process or some sort of professional development, and nothing happens as a result, then that money, effort, time has been wasted. And therefore we should be, we should put our big pants on and say, well, we failed. But often we don't. We just check the box. The LMS updates to say these people have done the training. Too bad, so sad, they didn't get anything out of it. On we go. And we even have a line on a training and development metrics called scrap training. That's ridiculous. Why do we actually measure training that didn't work? That's not okay. So a lot of people are not ready for me in organisations because I come in and go, oh, let's lift a lid off this. Oh, hang on. And I'm a bit of a truth teller, and that sometimes hurts. And then we get over that and we go, okay, so let's look at what's working. Why did that work? And why did this not work? And so that successful learning experience is a kind of like a magic potion to say, how do we create them? Not sometimes, but all the time. And that's where the magic happens.
Yeah, that's really helpful and a good way to look at it. And then if you can kind of drill down another level, thinking about, again, those of us who create learning experiences or who are responsible for overseeing the creation of learning experiences, what's most important in terms of how we should approach the creation of those learning experiences? And what can sometimes get us distracted where we end up creating something that maybe is not as valuable as it should be?
I think that the focus of the entire learning sequence, from strategic performance consulting into instructional design, into the facilitation of the learning intervention or the delivery of it, and then back out the other side with more strategic performance consulting to say what actually happened and did it work. That whole loop, I think there's only one part that really, truly matters, and that is the instructional design. And that is often the part that is rushed, under budget, underfunded, undervalued, under everything. Add any word you want on the end of it. Because what happens is the gap is established by the strategic performance consultant or that role, even if it's one person. Then there seems to be this rush or haphazard design take place. You know, people are still using ADDIE. That's ridiculous. That's 1960s. Like, we're not using anything else from the 1960s. Like, my phone is not from the 1960s. My computer's not from the 1960s, and yet we're using ADDIE. Like, that's just ridiculous. And so when we think about that, let's just toss that out. And so then the instructional design process happens, and often it's just a PowerPoint slide deck that someone's put together with maybe a bit of a knowledge check at the end. Well, that's not learning design. And then it goes into the facilitation, either or the delivery of it via, you know, if it's e-learning or whatever it is. And then comes the problems, because then it didn't work. And then we go, oh, why didn't it work? Well, we did the analysis. We've got the needs analysis here. The gap's been established. Oh, it must be the facilitator. Oh, it must be the graphics we used on the e-learning. No, the problem, the root cause of the problem, I see as 99% of the time, is actually the instructional design. And that's where I put my effort to say, if we do this right, the life of a trainer or a facilitator is easy. The life of the learner is talking about successful learning experience that you were talking about, Luke, before. That becomes easy. Everything becomes smooth waters. So the most important thing in my mind is the instructional design, to say, what do we have to craft here to engage every adult learner, regardless of their learning preference, and take all personal preference out to say things like, oh, I don't like blue, I like purple, I like pink, I like green. It doesn't matter. Come back to a balanced approach that is highly engaging and motivational, and gets people saying, participants saying things like, oh my goodness, I wish I'd known this 5 years ago. Oh my goodness, that was amazing. Is there another module? Can we have a follow-up? All of that is participant language for that was a successful learning experience. And it all comes down to the instructional design, because that's where the magic happens. And then for me, when I'm training in the old world, pre-COVID, that I call the old world, I used to do that face-to-face. A long time ago, I used to do a lot of face-to-face, but everything's virtual now and has been for many years. But I just have a nice time. When I show up to training, I have a great time. It's relaxing. I'm with my participants. I'm fully on. I'm fully engaged. That's easy. That's a lovely day out for me. The hard part is the execution of that brilliant design. And people go, oh, Catherine, we had such a great group. No, you didn't. I made that happen. That training was amazing. I got it instantly. No, you didn't. I made that happen. I've put that into practice. I've shared that with my team. Okay, that's great because I made that happen. I made that happen not as a trainer. I made that happen as an instructional designer. That's where the craft is.
I'm sure you just inspired every instructional designer in our audience to aspire to that for sure.
Well, double their salary, I say. But if they're using Addy, halve their salary immediately.
No doubt. No doubt. I know you referred to it as magical, and of course, it's not magic, right? And that's probably a really good transition to your model, the ID9 intelligent design approach. Can you tell us more about what makes that approach different and why it's more effective than, as you put it, Addy?
Well, Addy did its job, but I think people say about Addy that it's the system that they use. No, it's not. It's an acronym of 5 words. It's a process. No, it's not. It's an acronym of 5 words. It's a toolkit. No, it's not. It's an acronym of 5 words. So that annoyed the heck out of me because I went looking as a trainer when I started teaching people how to train, and people said, "Hey, Catherine, how do you do this?" I said, "I don't know. I just do it." And so then I had to work out how I did it. So I went looking and researching, and I thought, hang on, there's no system for people. There's no process. There's no tools. Everyone's making up themselves. So I said, well, I can do this. How is it that I do it? So I then started to put down and write the system and the process and the tools that I used. And then I thought, oh, I wonder if that works for other people. Yes, it does. So now, of course, fast forward 20 years, ID9 is, the professional certification that thousands of instructional designers, trainers, strategic performance consultants have done around the world. And they now have gone on to train probably 5 million or more people. So it works. And the first rule of the process is some basic foundation blocks. And the first rule is it's not your course, it's their course. So let's come back and take that apart and say, what would that look like if it wasn't your course, if it was their course? Now we actually say, well, what do you know about adult learning? Oh, I know a lot about adult learning. Great. Are you using it? No. So let's put all that into play. So all of that theoretical stuff around adult learning, I've done that for people. I've been from end to end of it and said, okay, let's now take the best of that. And now not only say, yes, we know it, but we're going to put that and activate that into every learning intervention. And so from there, we now have some foundations. And then from there, it's really process. Pre-course, during course, post-course, what are the elements to go in? And then I've created a structure of different tiers of ID9. So silver, gold, platinum, and to say, okay, what is the quality level that is required for this particular learning intervention? And it might be silver, or it might be gold, or it might be platinum. And that's to do with a lot of decisions around shelf life, number of people, exposure, budget, all of that. And some people say, oh, I want this to be platinum. And I go, oh, no, you don't. You're going to run it once. It's for a small group of people, not worth the effort, not worth the budget. When you want to do some big bang, amazing thing that's going to rock the world of your organisation, let's talk platinum. But if you're doing the mainstay, everyday stuff, you're going to go out with silver or gold, and probably silver. And silver, they go, oh, no, it's not good enough. It's not good enough. You go, well, it's way better than what you're doing right now. So that's the way I kind of approached it, from a very practical lens, where a lot of people today in L&D are not L&D professionals. They're something else's. They've come into the L&D function, and they come in with that beautiful state of unconscious incompetence. They don't know what they don't know. And it's beautiful. And then they get shattered as they move into conscious incompetence and go, what am I doing in this role? And they look for a process. And that's what I've designed. And my philosophy now is, if I can help people be more productive and better and get a better outcome, then that's what I'm about.
That's excellent. I know just through this podcast, you certainly can't instruct us on the process and on all aspects of ID9. But when you think about traditional instructional design and, focusing at the beginning on learning objectives and how are we going to measure those objectives, did the learner actually master what we laid out for them to learn and the outcomes we were looking for. How does that kind of play out in your model in terms of thinking about what are we setting up front and what are we going to measure at the end?
That is the North Star. I think that is the single most skipped step of learning. And I am militant about it. I am the biggest fan of Bloom's taxonomy, his original one, no deviation. That's where I sit. If I could meet Benjamin Bloom, he's passed away many years ago now, I would be very happy. You know, when people say, who do you want to have dinner with? Well, mine is Benjamin Bloom. How boring is that? Like, people say rock stars, politicians, royalty. I go, Benjamin Bloom. You know, how boring am I? So for me, if you set down the measurement in the beginning, you've got something to measure at the end. So learning objectives in the beginning are one thing. You know, measurements and metrics is a whole different conversation for a different day. But if we just start with learning objectives with my mate, Benjamin Bloom, very Australian mate. He's not my mate, by the way. I don't even know him. But he set out the most brilliant taxonomy and provided not only the what, but the how. In the how of use these action verbs to start your learning objectives. Okay, there is a tool, and if you don't have it, send me a LinkedIn message and I'll send it to you. There is a tool to give you that as the beginning of the process. And yet, when we look at lists of learning objectives, we see words like understand, appreciate, and all of those things that I can't measure. So I say to people, okay, right, understand. Let's get rid of the word understand out of learning completely. From beginning to end, let's just not even use it. And then they say, but I want people to understand. And I say, well, how do I see that? How do I see that in action? If people understand, what is the observable behaviour that I see people when they have that understand? Oh, well, they'd be able to use this. They'd be able to list that. They'd be able to define this. They'd be able to discuss that. Great. Now we're on the track. Now we're cooking. Now we're on Bloom's. Just do that. So some basic things around any person listening to this podcast can dig up a course outline that they've done, open it up on their screen in the next 30 minutes, look at the list of learning objectives. If it's understand, you're contacting me on LinkedIn and you're going to get that done. Right? And if you're using words like appreciate, you're having a coffee with me. And if there's 3 or 4, you're saying to me, Catherine, can we meet for a coffee because I need to talk, right? And I'll show up on LinkedIn and I'll have a look at it and I'll guide you through and I won't charge you, because that's how passionate I am about it. Because if you don't get that from the beginning, and then at the beginning of every topic, as you're training it or as it's going out in e-learning, digital, whatever it is, you then restate that and say, by the end of this, you should be able to do this. You should be able to use blah, 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 list blah, 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 define blah, blah, blah. It's easy. Get into the groove. And if you're not in the groove, I'll help you get in the groove. And then together, when someone says to you, who's the 5 people you'd have to dinner, you'll be saying Benjamin Bloom. That's what everyone will be saying.
And Catherine Mattiske.
And Catherine Mattiske. Well, whatever. No, I'm way off that. Come on. Come on. That's a pipe dream. I'll be well and gone by then. So, yeah.
Can you share an example of, how this approach can be applied to like a real performance problem or an opportunity? What would a model learning experience look like by following ID9?
It will be in 3 parts. It'll be what's happening pre-course, what's happening during the course, and what's happening after the course. And each of the 3 parts get attention and are part of the instructional design process. So we don't start the process of ID9. There's a 9-step process for the during part, which starts at the welcome and ends with the close, and there's 9 steps. So we can start there, but we also need to start to say, okay, how do we set up these learners to become high on a model that I created called the Learning Readiness Model? So how ready are they, which is how supported are they and how motivated are they for this learning intervention? And what can we be giving them to get them ready? Now, this goes way back to my computer training days in the 90s, where what I found was people walked into my training room cold. They had no idea what was coming up. So that then increased their anxiety. They had moved already from unconscious incompetence, where they don't know what they don't know, to conscious incompetence. They were consciously incompetent when they walked in. So in ID9, we want to eliminate that coldness and start the learning process before. So that looks like easy things. Sending out the course outline, the brochure, to people before. Sending out things like questionnaires, pre-course measurement, what we call pre-course measurement, but for them it's disguised questionnaires, assessments, or it might be reading, or it might be an activity, or it might be, hey, you're going to work in groups, here's your group, meet with them for coffee before, whatever it is. Something's happening pre. Then the during piece, and we follow that very balanced approach, making sure that we've hooked in all different types of adult learners. And that's not just across the intervention, but in every topic. So every topic uses a tool called the topic rotation, and that then hooks in every type of learner and their learning preference in that process. And then we don't get to the close of the training program and say, bye-bye, good luck. Then the next part that's invoked is the post-course, which is certainly any measurement that needs to take place, and post-course support. So what does that look like? It could look like office hours, post-course case studies, regroups, integration sessions, whatever that is, a whole lot of things. But it's a 3-part process. Running parallel to that is not only the support of the learning team, but the support of the learner's manager. So sending out a manager's briefing kit, during making sure that if there's anything bubbling to the surface, we're talking to managers, we're keeping them engaged. If they can attend, that would be great, if it's a live session. And then post, again, integrating back with the manager. At the end of the day, the responsibility for the learning lies with the manager, not with the training team. That baton is passed when in the post. So we need to set that opportunity to pass the baton way back in the pre, because what we want to do is make managers look smart. We want to make them look engaged. We want to make them look caring. We want to make them be asking all the right questions. So we have to tell them the questions. We have to tell them what's in the course. We have to say, hey, your direct report is engaged in this course. So we support the manager all the way through. So it's kind of like 2 tracks. One is a learner track, one is a manager track. And at the end of the day, we join those tracks up. That's pretty much how it works.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. We had a guest, our last guest, a podcast that just went out regarding sales training, and they're pretty much following the exact formula that you just mentioned, and having the parallel manager track to keep the manager engaged and throughout the learning process. And then they're ultimately part of the evaluation as well, because they're observing the performance. So really good stuff. It seems like if we want to pivot to your latest work, which is around unlocking your inner genius, and it speaks to both the learning designer and the learner. Can you talk about that connection and how you would like to see a learning leader apply these ideas to our work?
So I've been locked up in large corporate Fortune 500 companies globally for the last 27 years. That's how long I've had my business. And I was challenged at the beginning of 2021 to take ID9 to everyone, because it's very much locked up in very large corporate L&D. And my blink response was, that's impossible. No, it's completely for L&D. And then I thought, oh, Catherine Mattiske, get over yourself. Using the word impossible, really? That's really, I say people don't use that. So I go, okay, I'll take a dose of my own medicine, and thought, how can I do this? So fast forward to now, I wrote a book called Unlock Inner Genius, and an online profile and a very complicated algorithm to work out and to tell someone, to inform someone of their learning preference. Now, for many people in the world, they don't know how they learn. They've never been taught to learn. And I want to change that. Because if you know how you learn as an individual, the next thing that happens is, oh my goodness, everyone around me is different. Oh, so that's the next step. And so then how do I then bridge that gap between myself and other people around me? So that has gone absolutely gangbusters. It's gone nuts. Like I had no idea. On the 1st of October, 2021, we started a Facebook page. On the 1st of November in 2021, we had 100,000 people following us. And I'm going, what on earth is going on here? Because there's just this feeling about, how do I communicate to people around me? How do I actually unlock other people around me? Not in a formal learning capacity, but in every email. How do I communicate better in emails? How do I do that presentation so I'm hooking everybody in? How do I write that report that gets me approval for that next budget? Well, that's unlock inner genius, because then all the things I said about the balanced training in ID9, that all goes into your email. Or if you know how the recipient learns, you just write it in their language, not in your language, but in their language. So that's been amazing, because I've now seen what happens when non-learning and development professionals pick up this work and they say things in their participant language like, where's this been? This has changed. Like, I just did a presentation. I'm just doing a training course at the moment, the very first Discover Your Genius Quotient training course. We're just wrapping it up tomorrow, which has been the 6-week program. And they're saying things like, senior leaders are saying, I did a pitch to my leadership team for more budget. I got more than what I asked for. They never do that. And I used your template. And I went, fantastic. Now, they're not learning and development folks. They have no interest in the mechanics of the algorithm. They couldn't care less who Benjamin Bloom was. Imagine that. But they just have unlocked. And I believe that everyone has this inner genius within them. And if you unlock that, then you can learn faster, you can communicate better, you can connect with other people, and you become way more influential. And I'm seeing the productivity of that, and it's just amazing.
Yes, thanks so much for sharing all of your plans going forward. It is really exciting and inspiring, and definitely look forward to how you're unlocking people's geniuses and their potential going forward. And thanks so much for joining us, Catherine.
Delightful conversation. I feel like we've just scratched the surface on these topics, but I think coming back to just keeping the focus on the learner. I mean, I've just heard that coming loud and clear through everything you said. So thanks for the inspiration and the conversation today, Catherine.
Thanks so much.
Luke, what a fun conversation with Catherine. She had so many inspirational thoughts. What are your takeaways from the interview?
Yeah, that was a great interview, Susan. First, it was fun to hear Catherine's passion for creating powerful learning solutions that deliver results. And that's been her focus as a consultant for decades. Her key point: if people don't apply their learning, if they don't take action, if the learning transfer doesn't happen, then learning has not taken place. Money and time have been wasted. That should never happen when we do instructional design right. She had a big shout out to the instructional designer, as long as they're not following the ADDIE model. She made clear that when we get the instructional design, the ID right, we'll get learning outcomes that make a performance difference on the job and in the organization. Catherine gave us a glimpse of her ID9 instructional design model. Most important to it, start with observable learning objectives based on Bloom's taxonomy. Get those objectives right and have a plan to measure them. Other key point, it's not your course, it's their course. Don't rely on your personal preferences. Keep the learner top of mind. Finally, Catherine talked about her new venture, Unlocking Your Inner Genius, which takes her learning ideas beyond instructional designers to everyone who wants to learn and succeed. Of course, there's more to learn from Catherine and good stuff in the show notes to take you there.
That's great, Luke. So what's new at Da Vinci?
Well, we're about to kick off a project to implement our EcoLearn learning management system for a large state government agency. We'll be customizing a lot of the features to meet their specific needs. For instance, this organization contracts with dozens of instructors from outside the agency. Within our EcoLearn LMS, we'll not only schedule the instructors and their classes, but will also facilitate contracting with the instructors and paying them within the LMS. It's really a good fit for EcoLearn.
We'll look forward to hearing more about that, Luke, and we'll put some information about EcoLearn in the show notes in case our listeners are interested. Thanks, Luke. And many thanks to Catherine Mattiske for joining us today. If you have any questions about what we talked about, you can reach out to us on DaVinci's social channels through our website, davinci.com, or by emailing us at poweredbylearning@davinci.com.
Powered by Learning is brought to you by DaVinci Interactive. For more than 25 years, DaVinci has provided custom learning solutions to government agencies, corporations, medical education and certification organizations, and educational content providers. We collaborate with our clients to bring order and clarity to content and technology. Learn more at davinci.com.